Thank you. We're at the top of the hour, and we'll get started. I know there'll probably be people coming on, but first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of your busy day to take part in this, which is our first session of 2017. As always, first, some housekeeping. You should have received the handbook for today's session. If not, it's on the website under Education at ITM21ST.com. But we know that today is a little bit different. It's a different type of session, a much smaller session, which is the way it was designed for clients only. We may have some regulators, we may have some friends of the firm on the call also, but I want everybody to take part in the session as much as you would like. You always have the option to type in a question, and I would encourage that if you have a question at any point in time, that you type that in. And we're also going to open up the lines a couple of times because your feedback is really the big reason for this session. So please do not feel uncomfortable about chiming in at any time. First, let's take a note about our next two webinar sessions. Our next webinar is going to feature Josh Husbands, a partner at Holland & Knight Law Firm and a person with great insight into estate planning for your clients. Josh has been listed on a number of Best Lawyers in America list, and he's a member of the American College of Trust and Estate Counsel, ACTEC, the ABA Tax Section, and the ABA Business Law Section. I met Josh first at an event at the Leadership Center for Investment Stewards at West Point I guess it was about 3 years ago, when we were part of a group that developed the best practices standards for life insurance stewards. Josh understands life insurance as well as estate planning. I'm looking forward to an insightful session on the effect of the Trump presidency on estate planning. On March 28th, which is a new date, please note that it's the new date, it was the 21st, John Mendelson of Asher Group will be speaking on life settlements. John had to reschedule this session because of something that came up, but we're looking forward to a session where we will provide you with a true nuts and bolts session on life settlements. Many trustees have a vague understanding of life settlements and what they are, but not a very deep one. So this session will teach you about life settlements, and if you attend, you will know why you should be looking at a settlement, understand the process better, and just understand whether or not it makes sense for your client. John is an industry leader with a wealth of knowledge. Just one note, I just got a note from Chad that if anyone does want to make a comment, you can always raise your hand and Chad can unmute your line. So besides typing in a question, if you do raise your hand, Chad can unmute your line. Today the agenda is very full. We're going to quickly run through the reasons for an annual review, and we're going to focus on what is included in a review as part of our discussion on the ITM 21st proposed review system, which is really the focus today. And we're going to discuss the feedback we got from you about how you go about the process in your own shop. And after reviewing the mock-ups of the system and the information in it, where we will need your input, we'll close out by talking about the process going forward. And again, at any point in time, you can type in a comment or a question or put your hand up, as Chad mentioned. We encourage you to do that. Now with me today are John Barkhurst, who along with Leon Wessels heads up our new business and also has a great background in life insurance, as well as Taylor Hassman, who is heading up this project and has done a great job putting together the mock-ups and info for today's session. They'll be speaking later on in the session. I want to note today that we may have some interaction with regulators that deal with irrevocable life insurance trust. This is much appreciated, but it must be noted that any comments are personal, and participation in no way means that any regulator or any regulation entity endorses any of the processes employed by ITM 21st, either here on this session or elsewhere. So why do we do an annual review? For those of us looking for guidance, we start at the OCC handbook, the book that applies to those trustees in national banks and federal savings associations that are under the watchful eye of the OCC. This book provides bank examiners with expanded examination procedures which supplement the core assessment standards in earlier booklets of the Controller's Handbook. But it also provides us, those of us who are fiduciaries or working with the fiduciaries, with a track to run on. In the last few years, we've seen some states limiting your liability if you are a fiduciary overseeing life insurance, but the handbook is clear that if you are under the watchful eye of the OCC, you still have requirements. And those on this call are probably familiar with those requirements, certainly the ones which include annual reviews. There are a number of review requirements. Before accepting the account, a review of the prospective account to determine whether it can be properly administered by the bank is required. After accepting the asset, the bank has to conduct a prompt review to evaluate whether they are appropriate for the account. And then an annual review is required where a bank must review the assets that it has investment discretion over to evaluate whether it is appropriate for the account. So what does that mean, appropriate? The dictionary definition is suitable for a particular person, condition, occasion, or place, where it's fitting. But what does that really mean for a life insurance policy? Well, for those of you who have taken part in webinars we have done in the past, we've talked about this on a number of occasions. Appropriate can be related to price, with some saying it is inappropriate to pay more than you should. But really, what is the cost in a policy? Because it's not really the premium. And it's not that easy to determine with life insurance, as each product type may have different costs. Some higher, some lower, but usually with reasons. Some policies have death benefit guarantees that are worth the possible additional price, especially if the alternative is a policy that lapses in the future. But those policies may not have any premium flexibility, which may make a policy inappropriate for a certain grantor. For example, we have had situations where a very asset wealthy but cash poor real estate developer, for example, would have a policy with a guaranteed death benefit, which is a very, very good thing, but with a very large and required premium. In other words, in order to keep that guarantee in force, you had to pay that premium each and every year in full and on time. And maybe that's not so good for someone who has cash flow issues. So appropriate can mean different things for different clients, which is part of your challenge as a trustee. And what about a variable life policy? These policies are tied to the equity markets, and these policies can actually lose money in the market. It's maybe not a bad policy for somebody who's young, but what about a variable policy on someone who's now old? Is that still appropriate? Or if it is, what is the allocation that you have for that policy? Just as with a client with a retirement plan entering retirement years, the allocation may change, so can the allocation in a policy, in a life insurance policy for an elderly client. So appropriate can really depend on the trust and the grantor. And before we get into the meat of the presentation, I just wanted to point that out. For those of you who are attempting to prove prudence in your decision-making process, the most important aspect of doing that is developing a consistent process and then documenting it. And it makes sense to do it as efficiently as possible. In fact, the Uniform Prudent Investor Act points out that compliance with the Act is determined in light of the facts and circumstances existing at the time of a trustee's decision or action and not by hindsight. And the key is to document that compliance when a decision is made or a task is completed. And the key to documentation is a process, one that you always follow and one that is efficient, which is really what this call is all about. Now, when we started the process of creating an annual review program or process, we wondered exactly how each client completed their annual reviews. So when we decided on this session, we surveyed some of you, and the answers were interesting. And though your outcomes may be consistent, the way you get there may not be. It's not a bad thing. It's just that different firms do things differently. Some of you spread the reviews out throughout the year. Some of you do them all in the first quarter. Some peg the review to the month the account is open, and some base the timing of the policy review or the trust review on the completion of the policy review by ITM 21st, which would mean it is based on the policy anniversary date in most situations. For most of you, the reviews are attempted to be done all at once, but for many, there is a reason to spread the review out, usually because you are waiting for a piece of information. Maybe that information is internal information you have to get from inside the trust department, but often it's external information from the client, the grantor, the beneficiaries, or even information from the ITM 21st review. And again, there are differences when it comes to who does the review. Some of you spread the task among a number in your group. One person sent a response back, me, I do it all. So in some situations, one person alone is responsible. But often there is more than one person taking a part. And in the last bullet, you can see that the process in that particular situation is fairly elaborate. Again, nothing right, nothing wrong. It's just that people are doing things differently. And this was great information we got, and it gives us guidance as we move forward and develop this review process. As mentioned, the ITM 21st report is central to the process. That report will tell you the condition of the policy, how long it's going to last under current assumptions, and it's also going to point out any issues around the policy, as well as basic issues or facts like the policy type, things you need to know for your annual review. And for those of you who are under our managed solution, our outsourced solution, the remediation team may play a large part in the review process with documentation around the policy. For example, with term conversions, or if there were any policy issues, or even if there was a policy replacement during the year. And that documentation developed throughout the year could be an important component of any annual review. And of course, the work that we do is centered around the insurance IT system, which is why we are building this new component into the system to make the process as seamless as possible. So here, Chad, I want to open up a minute and reach out to Todd Abrams. And Todd is someone who has been in the personal trust space, but right now is a bank examiner with the OCC. And if Todd is, Chad, if you can open Todd's phone up, I would just like to ask Todd what it is that he looks for when he goes into a bank as to their annual review. Todd, are you there?
This is Chad. I'm trying to get Todd line unmuted. He needs to enter in a PIN number that I'm clicking to him, and then his 64? Line will open up. I believe it's 60.
What's the... Sorry about that, folks.
Okay, his line.
Is it easier to open up all the lines, Chad?
I can't. I'm sorry, Mike. His line, I'm unable to unmute His is muted on his end.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll try to reach back to Todd later, if he could unmute his line. Before I hand this over to Iowa so that Taylor and John can walk you through screenshots of the system layout and get additional feedback, and we will hopefully be able to open the lines correctly at that time, I wanted to just note the IT team that has been developed at ITM 21st. We have grown to well over 100 employees here at ITM 21st, and of those over 100 employees, 14 of them work in IT. This is a group out of our Minneapolis office and an outing they had, a team building outing they had in Minneapolis last spring. I was just up in the Minneapolis office last week and watching the team work, and it's very impressive, and it's quite a commitment on the part of management and speaks really to today's reality, which is it seems that every company is an IT company to some extent. Much of the work that we do in our IT department is dealing with security and keeping all systems in good order in a growing company. But half of the efforts of the team are in improvements, either in developing new business lines or, in the case of our discussion today, making upgrades to current business lines. I just wanted to point this out because we're pretty proud of their work, and any of you that have worked with Taylor or will work with Taylor on this project can see why we are. So let's turn it over to Taylor and John and take a look at the system and development and get your feedback. And hopefully we'll be able to also speak with Todd as we move through the rest of the session. So Taylor and John, please take it over.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Just a couple of preliminary remarks here before we jump into some of these mock-ups and screenshots. Now, as Mike pointed out, no two trustees are doing their annual trust account reviews the same. There's certainly differences in processes and the review form itself. So really, it was our goal to develop to develop a Reg 9 system that encourages consistency and industry best practices for reviewing life insurance trust accounts annually, but still giving the individual trustee the flexibility to customize, a system and a report to their specific needs. And again, as Mike alluded to, for our managed solution clients, for our standard solution clients that are using the Insurance IQ Trust Administration System, a lot of that information is housed within the system, and we'll be able to automatically populate many of these Reg 9 reporting fields, which is going to further streamline the process for you as the trustee. So the screenshots that we're showing over the next few slides, again, are mock-ups of how we really envision the system to function, look and feel. The project is very much in the development stage, and we want your feedback. Again, that's kind of the point of this call today, is to collaborate with you, our clients. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out at any point throughout this process, or certainly in follow-up. The Reg 9 system, as we see it and envision it, really has three basic components. There's the console, kind of a dashboard for tracking the statuses of each trust account review. There's a settings section, kind of a account calibration type screen, and a place to create your customized review form template. And then there's, of course, completing the review form itself for a specific trust account. So we'll certainly pause for questions and comments after we discuss and go through each of those sections. But with that, I'll let Taylor kind of walk through some of these mock-ups as she's taken a lot of the information and feedback from you and put it together in some of these screenshots and forms.
All right, thanks, Dan. So for this first screenshot, this is the console. So this is the dashboard that you would see to manage all the trusts that are in your Reg 9 reviews. So let's see, show this grid with status, the data was last updated, and other relevant information. You'll be able to filter by status if you just wanted to see reviews that are in process. you could filter the grid to just that. And then clicking on a row would take you to that Trust Reg 9 form. And then we also have a page off of this where you can manage those fields. So we'll offer the first open lines for any questions or comments just initially.
Just a point on that, certainly there's going to be several statuses as it relates to are not completed. You're going to have accounts that are, in various stages of completion, and then you can have obviously accounts where those trust reviews have been completed. So the goal here with this console is just a central dashboard to track and actively monitor all statuses at any given point. Any questions, comments there? All right.
All right, we'll move on. So the settings for the Reg 9 console will be stored on the account details page of the IIQ application, which some of you may already be familiar with. So you would be able to choose to turn on the Reg 9 feature if you choose to use it. If not, you can keep it off. And then we would have the Reg 9 cycle date, which determines when trusts are pulled into the console. So for some of you, it could be based on the trust agreement date. For others, it could be whenever the policy review is completed or all at once on January 1. Because there were so many different schedules that we received in the initial feedback, we'll give you options that best fit how your office completes these reviews. And then the other page would be the custom fields. So you'll also have the ability to manage the fields in the form itself. So if you don't need one of the standard questions that we provide, you could choose to not display it just by unchecking the box. Or if you have additional questions that we don't provide in the standard form, you would be able to add additional fields. So there would be quite the opportunity to really customize this to how your office chooses to complete these reviews. Are there any questions or comments at this point?
I guess the key point there is we saw a number of your sample Reg 9 reports and reviews, and some were 8 questions long and some were 38 questions long. So while there was some consistency and maybe some of those questions that were being asked, there certainly was a number of questions that varied from trustee to trustee. So we'll try to standardize that as much as possible by creating some of the stock questions that are commonly seen on a typical life insurance trust annual review, and then give you the option and flexibility to expand upon that where needed.
All right, I'll move on. So then back in the console, once you would click on a trust, it would open the form pages. So these are some of the standard fields we added based on feedback. This form would be tied to the IIQ application, so a lot of this information could pull automatically into it, which will help automate the process for you. For example, you have your trust information here, so like the title, account number, administrator, those kinds of things could very easily pull from the system, saving you time. Then if you got your policy information, a lot of that could pull into those grids or those additional fields, depending on how we set that up. Got your contact information, this could all easily pull in from the system. And then these are kind of grouped into kind of the questions, similarities, fees, taxes, and then comments at the end. And then here's where you could update the review status based on where you are in the process. in process, or if there's variances that need follow-up, or if it's ready to complete, you can all manage that right here. So that's just kind of a basic walkthrough of how this fields and form would generally be laid out and how it would function. So we'll go ahead and open the lines again and see if there's any comments, suggestions.
For anyone that would like to ask a question, please raise your hand on the chat section, and then I'll unmute that line one at a time. Otherwise, we'll have just way too much background noise with all lines unmuted. So if you got a question, please raise your hand, and then I can unmute your line. Thanks.
And what we'll do in follow-up is we can send each that is participating today a listing of the various questions and sections and subsections of the form. So please feel free to review that and follow up and provide some commentary back. That may be the easiest way to tackle some of this as well. If there's no questions or comments, we can send it back to you, Mike, to move forward.
Okay. Chad, why don't you just open up completely? Let's make sure that we don't have any questions. I wanted to, if you could just unmute the lines, hopefully it won't be too bad, but I wanted to reach out. Are they unmuted?
I am unmuting them all right now.
Okay, thanks. Todd Abrams, are you on? Can you hear me? I wanted to try this one more time.
Yes, I am.
So, Todd, I just wanted to ask you a quick question. As somebody that's been in the personal trust business and is now a bank examiner, you have kind of both sides covered. And I just wanted to ask you, when you go into a bank, or what is it that you're looking for when you're dealing with or reviewing the annual review?
Well, there must be a misunderstanding. I'm not a bank examiner.
This is my fault then. I apologize, Todd. I thought that, is this Todd Abrams? Hello? I was communicating earlier today with Todd Abrams, so there must be some confusions here. I apologize. So let's do this then. Why don't we go to the next screen? So what we attempted to do today was just try to get some more feedback on what Taylor has been working on. And obviously, this is a long and arduous process to develop a tool such as this. So without the feedback today, what I would hope for is that those of you who would be interested in this type of program for an additional feature of the Insurance IQ system would reach out to us as we go through this process. Maybe after this session, reach out to either Taylor or to myself in an email, because after the webinar, we are going to work on additional IT development, and then we're going to reach back out and hopefully get more feedback from you before we develop the final component. So on the screen is Taylor's email, is my email, is John Barkhurst's email, and I would appreciate it and love it if those of you who are interested in this type of feature would reach out to us. There are a lot of different components and a lot of different things that we're interested in doing, and so one of the things we have to do is we have to pick and choose what is the most efficient tool for our clients. So part of today's session was to gauge the interest in developing a Reg 9 review component that would create a more efficient system for the annual review that you're required to do. So hopefully over the course of the next few weeks, though we didn't get the feedback I'd hoped for today, we can get more feedback from you as we move forward and develop the components. So with that said, we'll close out the session today, and like I said, there's 3 emails on the screen there, and I would appreciate any feedback that you could give us for the program that we're developing. And I appreciate everybody taking part today, and again, hopefully you will reach out to us and give us your feedback. Thank you very much.